Three, two.
Hey, do we do it now?
Okay.
All right, we got it.
Gosh, we got this. I'm sorry. Gosh, it's like a fart in church.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, everyone.
Hey,
Welcome to another episode of the Resurgence Podcast. We got the one and only Chris on here
yes,
again.
Yeah.
we do.
with
love
the giggles. We got the
It's-
giggles.
With the giggles. Yes.
fantastic.
We are.
This is our 4th take, by the way.
Yes.
We're doing well.
We're struggling through this, but no, we're excited for this conversation. If you missed last episode, we had a cool conversation with Chris about just impacts of COVID in his business world, mortgage lending, how he got involved in all of that. And so if you missed that, make sure you check it out. Today, we're really excited about our conversation, talking about COVID again, but more just gearing it through the church lens, ministry, being a pastor, all of that stuff. And so before we get to that, Scott, why don't you lead us off with our quick icebreaker question that we did not give you again.
Oh, I love these. We every time we have a guest, we have to come up with an icebreaker question that we do not send to the guest because we want to give
Fantastic.
spur the moment. We want them to just be really embarrassed and
Like the vasectomy story. Last
yes,
episode.
right. We still have not heard the end of that, which I don't know if we really want to, but maybe you do. I don't know. We may
Do
get
you mean
to
you
that.
haven't heard the end of it and you literally haven't, or I won't stop talking about it?
That yeah,
Oh, okay.
it could be all kind of rolled into one.
He loves
so
vasectomy
that's so
stories.
funny.
Sorry.
So you're good. So here we have this week's icebreaker question, and it is in the realm of worship and worship leading because you were a worship leader at one point for many years. So what is your most embarrassing moment as a worship leader?
Easy.
Oh, he's got an
Oh,
easy.
this
one's easy.
Caleb had one right off the bat too. So we've all talked about this. We've all
Yes.
had those situations where we've had those.
I have two.
Oh, awesome.
Oh,
Even
Can I
better.
tell them both?
Yes, please do. Yes.
I don't know if I should tell the second one. All right, well, let's tell the first one and then we'll
Okay.
go from there. So, okay. So I had a flub in like the words that I said. So there was a song back when there's this church called Elevation Church in North Carolina that makes a ton of music.
Yeah.
Back in the day when they were not quite so popular, they had a song called Give Me Faith.
Oh, yeah.
It's like their first big, huge
Yep.
song that probably everybody across the country played. And I got some lines mixed up because the first verse, one of the verses says, I need you to pierce through the dark. And then another line on the different verse, the first line says, I need you to open my eyes. And I started singing the pierce, but I realized, oh, quick, it's actually, God, I need you to open my eyes. So what I said was, God, I need you to open my eyes. So it came out of my mouth, and I'm like, did I just ask God to poop in my eyes? And I turned, as I'm sitting trying to like hold it together, I'm playing the rest of the verse. I turn around to the rest of the band, and they're all like,
It's like, yep, you
Yep,
said it.
they heard- we heard it.
They were no
We
help.
heard it.
They were yep.
Yeah,
We heard it. We heard it.
Oh my
man.
gosh.
Did
So
you,
good.
Did you recover from that then after, or you just...
No, it's just giggling in public is just my
It's
favorite
tough.
thing. It's just,
It's
whatever.
Like, it was like Caleb last month said we asked him, he said he's like, I blacked out. He said literally he blacked out and does not remember what after that. Oh my gosh, I can't like that's
So the other one, I don't know if I'll just say it. You can edit it out if
Okay.
you don't like it.
We can bleep it out if we need to.
There's no swear words.
we're not
Okay.
bleeping anything.
There's no swear words, but there is a reference to anatomy. So David Crowder's song. I can't remember the name of the song. It's been a bunch of years since we played it, but one of the lines often in the song is, "And what I need is resurrection." I can sing. I just can't remember the name of the song. But anyway, I was playing the line, singing the line, and I just got lost in my words a little bit. Same thing.
Yeah.
And I just forgot the res in resurrection. And so I just basically told everybody, God, what I need is.
And everyone left the church.
Same exact thing.
Okay, we're out.
Same exact thing. Turn around to the band, and they're like,
And they're like, yep,
Yep,
again.
Yep, you did.
Confirmed.
Yep. Hey, we're
It's
no
been
help.
said.
You just That's
So then, yeah, like
Oh my
as we're getting off
gosh.
stage, just giggling like
Oh
school
my
kids.
goodness.
oh
The drummer in particular
Of
was
course.
Tyler Klusman, was like, dude, that is the funniest. You
I-
totally just said that in front of everybody.
I
Wow.
can't even imagine.
So anyway, sorry. Hopefully, no kids were listening.
And did
Yeah.
okay? You didn't stop. You kept as
No,
the
no,
professional
you
that
gotta
you
press
are.
on,
That's
man.
right. It's exactly that's
Yep.
Power through.
power through.
Yikes.
Oh,
God made me
yes,
beautiful, just the way I am.
Yep,
Scott,
yep.
I can.
This is ministry,
This
right?
is a segue.
Okay,
You said, yeah,
yes,
the
there we go.
segue to the next
Segue.
question.
There we go.
Yes.
Right. There we go.
You mentioned last episode, and obviously we talked about it a little bit. You were involved in worship ministry.
Uh-huh.
You were a pastor as well at one point. And so give us a little just summary of kind of when you felt a call into ministry, how you got involved in ministry, and then maybe your transition when you left, kind of just what you were feeling and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, being involved in church in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I was 7 years old. I like wanted to get baptized and was really involved in my church, First Baptist Church in Sioux Falls. And then, I mean, I was highly involved. Literally, the day I graduated high school, after being really involved in high school, I started working for the church like the next day, basically. And then for like the next 20 straight years, so from 18 until I was 38, I was employed at a church every single week of my life. So at a few different churches in Sioux Falls. And so and it started really, I mean, I was mostly just interested in music at the time, playing guitar, and, you know, contemporary worship services were just kind of like becoming, you know, the more popular thing among younger people and all that. And so like a lot of churches were having that battle that we shift away from traditional whatever. So I was just really involved, really excited about just the band setting in a worship service. And so that's really what I was not wanting to be a pastor. Actually, so I went to USF, got a theology degree, and that USF, University of Sioux Falls, if you're not from Sioux Falls, got a degree from there, and then started to go to seminary and really had a strong feeling that I did not want to be a full-time, work at church full-time, mostly just because I just wanted to play music. And at that point, I was probably just a little short-sighted, but at that point I was like, there's not really many full-time jobs in the city I'm living, Sioux Falls. So, and plus my wife and I knew that we didn't really want to leave because both our parents are here and we really wanted to have kids and make sure that our kids were near grandparents. So, so then I went back to school for teaching. So I decided I was just going to teach and lead worship part-time on the weekends, just kind of do that for as long as God wants me to.
Yeah.
And so that kind of led me from one job to the next, and ended up at the time, church was small, but it ended up being a really fast-growing church in Sioux Falls, and started as a worship leader there. And when I think there was just a few hundred people or whatever, and eventually that role turned into full-time kind of worship, small groups. Eventually did a bunch of different things. Ended up being a full-time pastor, you know, leading one of the campuses at the church in Sioux Falls. And so that was, I think I was there, I don't know, 8 or 9 years total.
Wow.
And I think by the end, you know, obviously churches have growth and hard times, all that kind of stuff, because we're humans. But I was, at the same time, we were having kids, and we had our 4th little one on the way. And so I think that time, plus that at that point, the church was kind of going through a really hard time, some growing pains, you could say. And the campus I was at, we decided to close that one down. And that was kind of I hung on, tried to plug some holes and do some things and just try to like reset. But once our baby was born in December, so we closed the campus down in August, baby was born in December. And really my time away, like it was just a couple weeks because we didn't have an in-person service at the end of the year. So like I was able to kind of like, that coincided nicely. I was able to take a couple weeks off to be home, but that was really my time to sit down and realize that I think it was time for me to do something new.
Yeah.
That I think the job itself, again, not church in general, but just the job had probably taken more out of me than what I was thinking. And I was too, I think just the idea of identity was like a big one in me. You know, it's hard. This is probably the big challenge that I'm trying to work through to figure out like what does healthy church involvement will even look like. I had done everything with good intentions, but I felt like I had learned in an unhealthy way that like my productivity was was something that God loved.
Hmm.
Which is like even saying it and implying that it's maybe not true even feels weird to say,
Yeah.
but it's like there is a weird dynamic in there
Mhm.
that like if you really understand what the gospel means, that it's like it's in your crap, it's in your hardship, it's like it's a path of descent that
Yeah.
actually helps you see who God is, not a path of ascent.
Mm.
And I've learned that a lot the last like 6 years since being a pastor, that and I just didn't know that back then. Again, like I just wasn't thinking about it. I mean, that's probably one of the other downsides of being a part of a church that was really fast growing. It was like there's never time to like process what was
Yeah,
happening.
right.
It's just like
Moving
you're constantly
fast.
trying to react to everything. And so in terms of like what's happening on the inside of you, like all the growing we did was just like leadership lessons and stuff, which is all good, but like spiritual formation was taking a back seat, and me processing what was happening inside of me probably just wasn't happening. And so yeah, I think there was moments when I was standing on stage during that like kind of 6 months time when my job had totally changed after I closed the campus. And there's times on stage I'm like, oh, I'm not even sure if I believe the things that I'm like praying about right now. And it's just a weird out of body experience to be so rote and so memorized, not memorized, but just like
Scripted.
well, it's like once you've been standing on a platform helping in church services for a couple decades, you kind of just know what to say, and you kind of get in a good flow, and you're kind of doing a good job. But it's like it's weird how you can your brain on one part's like doing what it's supposed to do, but on the other side I was like processing outside of myself what I was saying as I'm saying it.
Dang.
You know, so it's almost like you have two things happening inside of you at the same time. And I really like felt that, and it just felt not right. It just I'm like I shouldn't be, like I need to honor these questions that I'm having. And it wasn't like I was doubting God. Even if I was, I mean, I think that's fine. Like I think you need to bring honest doubts and questions to the table. Like God can handle all of that. But for me, it was just I'm just like I'm not sure what this church thing is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because we had attached our cart to the horse of like growing for so many years, and it worked. And then to all of a sudden go through a season of hardship is just a little bit like kind of resetting for me of like, what is this all about? Like, is a church supposed to grow? Yes. But at the same time, if you're obsessed with that, what does that mean? And I think I'm just only speak for myself, but like, I think you get in a mindset where if growth in church means that God's hand is on it, well, then what does that mean if your church is shrinking?
Yeah.
God's hand is not on it. That can't be true. And so, it was a good time to reset and reevaluate and ask questions that I feel like were brewing up inside of me, whether or not I liked it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that led me to my next chapter.
Yeah.
That's
exciting.
I'm so glad that you shared the way that you share and the things that you say, because we've had several conversations. I mean, we've been through a lot of change over the years, and it's just it's got to be hard, just to process all of those things and to be able to express those. So I appreciate you really being honest about, hey, there are questions that I have, and I'm fighting with this, and it just your vulnerability on that is just so.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to talk about it without coming across as like speaking out of a point of hurt or something. I don't
know what you're saying.
Because you don't like I don't ever want to be speaking as if somebody did something wrong to me, and now I'm like I don't know. I'm never going to point fingers at anybody else, because we're all just around here doing the best we can.
Exactly.
And again, like that's foolish of me to come from something and have these questions and all of a sudden point at that thing as the problem. To me, the problem is much bigger than that in terms of how we operate in a society, in terms of our faith today. And that to me is a question. I needed to step out of the church as an organization in order to like address those questions of how do I as a human being operate in the society we call the Midwest, we call the America, we call whatever, like how do you step back and analyze the fishbowl that we're swimming in so that you can understand what are the pitfalls that our society is going to hand you and say, here's the weird faith that you're supposed to believe. And then you take it and you realize, okay, this piece doesn't belong
Yeah.
and that piece doesn't belong. And like, I mean, I think that's what faith looked like. That's what faith is. I mean, we as a culture, I think, have gotten in a mode of thinking that faith means that you're certain about everything. Like, I need to be sure of all of these truths. But like, that's like, certainty is the opposite of faith. Faith is still like chasing after that like yearning inside of you, despite like the things that you are questioning, despite
Right.
like it's, so to me, I think like that's one big shift. It's like faith does not equal certainty. In fact, I think faith is like the opposite of certainty. And but our church culture doesn't really talk that way.
Yeah.
They train people to be certain so that you can defend and all of that. Like, they equip people to have that posture where it's like you need to be ready to like defend your faith.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem helpful to me anymore.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Dude, this is all really good stuff.
That's so great.
I'm curious to know what was your, like, what was day one like for you when you were not working in a church and you stepped foot into, you're talking about last episode, the banking world for the
Yeah.
very first time. Like, what was day one? What did it feel like for you personally? I'll let you answer that, and then I'll
Yeah.
respond to.
I felt just like foreign. Like it just felt like it felt for the first time in a long time I was like being faithful. You know, meaning I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like that kind of faith where I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I was wearing a suit. I mean, like, sort of, how did I feel? Felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
One, because I was wearing, because of what I was wearing. That's like, if you know who I am, like who I was coming out of like working at a church, like suit is like the opposite of like my personality type. And so like that was just like a visible, symbolic picture of what was like happening on the inside. Of like, I feel out of place. I feel like, you know, I'm just going to shut this door, and just like from what I had been doing for 20 years. Again, I wasn't walking away from my faith. It was just more like I was walking away from this type of involvement in a church organization. Like, now I'm doing totally something different. And it felt like I wasn't useful. I mean, it was a huge struggle. I mean, because again, I was coming out of this mindset of that God wants my productivity. He wants my work ethic. He wants me to work hard for him to reach people. And it's like, that all sounds good. But when you think your only purpose here is to be productive for God, like a person like me, I stepped out of this role that God had me in that felt really productive. And now I'm in a role that was like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, I felt like I need to go start a Bible study. I need to like go do all of these things. And I just felt like this frantic cat in a bag, or whatever the expression is, you know, like trying to do something. And that was the first step for me of God saying, dude, like chill out. And so, but that, I mean, it happened over time. It didn't happen right away. I had to learn that, like, again, it's still learning. I don't know how to answer that question of just like, because again, I think our culture tells you to be productive.
Produce.
And so therefore, like, of course, like our churches are going to be designed that way because it's filled with people who are in our culture, running businesses and having efficiency models and all that stuff. Like, I mean, of course you're going to be run that way. Like, you can't come in and say, let's not be efficient. Like, that's dumb. But like, how do you pay attention to that so that you can like serve God in a way that is more honest and doesn't get you to a point like I was, where I'm like, I have to produce for God. Because that to me was like this moment of like, this is wrong. Like how I need to be able to rest and understand like what God has done. And you know, I don't know.
No, that's awesome. And then I'm looking at some of the questions, and it's so great how when you get into conversations, you have a plan of where you want things to go, and then you get into those conversations and it completely goes in a different direction, and you're just like, we need to press into this, and we need to roll. We started this conversation out as a look back of what COVID was like, and it just evolved into a personal story of transformation from you know the ministry to you know, to where you are right now. So I don't know if that's kind of where you were
I was
feeling. And so
literally-
if there, I ask your question because I was
about
hoping you were.
to, when Chris was done with that thought, I literally was about to be like, let's go off script
This
here a
is
little bit
so
because,
great.
like,
I love
wanted
it.
to- I
Yes.
wanna
What
set
I
up
just yeah.
aside
So
the
I
COVID
wanted to
stuff
yes.
and keep leaning into some of this. But like, what would you?
And if I'm rambling too long, just kick me under the table.
You're not. I can't reach that far. You're not. No, this is
No, this is great
this
stuff.
is really
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
What do you think then is like a step in the right direction? I mean, you talk about how the culture of church is oftentimes, if we're not careful, it turns into production.
Mhm.
How would you combat that? I mean, what would be things or advice or something you tell people who are? I mean, because like currently I work in a church,
Mhm.
and I'm like, I would say amen to that. I mean, we worked at the same church for a period of time as well,
Yeah.
so like I've experienced that as well too. In your time of reflection, in your time out of church, is there anything you've came across or
Yeah.
stumbled upon that you're like, this is what I think we should maybe be shifting the focus a little bit?
I don't know if I can answer that question perfectly, but I can answer like where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, I would say my church involvement, the classical church way that you talk about church involvement is, I mean, it's just not, we're not super involved. But it's not because we're like trying to be anti-church at all. Like it's because my definition of what church actually means has shifted. And I think for me, what I've really learned is, and this kind of comes from COVID too. I mean, COVID pushed us into being home and not being able to be together it broke the norms. And for me, that was something that had to happen in my life because I was in this moment of trying to like, in honest faith, I'm like, God, I want to know who you are. I want to know what my life is for and all about. So like, I'm asking good questions, but at the same time, I'm like at the time I was still doing the regular Sunday church routine stuff.
Yeah.
And I never would have given myself permission to just totally wipe the slate clean and rethink of things. And so I think that's probably like a silver lining of COVID was that hopefully people had an opportunity to reset. Maybe, I don't know. I know for us, my family, we did. And I'm getting back to your question about like church, the direction of church. I think people maybe like me spent a year and a half. I mean, that's how long we probably stayed away from going to regular Sunday activities. Mm-hmm. During that time, it became very evident that God is present in all things. And I always knew that, but I also worked at a church that required me to highlight the presence of God, especially here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so like by spending all of your time and energy in trying to like, again, I'm not trying to say we were shifting where God's presence is, but we were trying to highlight it in this event, Sunday morning worship. And what I came to really became keenly aware of is that God's presence is with me when I'm sitting out on my deck. I've become a big bird watcher now. That's a big gift from COVID.
Let's go.
Is that and honestly, like bird watching to me, it was this healing process. It was me sitting quiet, still, again, not being productive. It goes back to that lesson too, and realizing that, my God, you have done great things. The good things I've done pale in comparison to what you've done. And that to me was this, honestly, like a new birth in my faith, in understanding that when you start to see God's presence in all things, for me, it was just sitting, listening to birds and the wind and trees, and realizing that like God was there before I ever sat down. And if that's true, then that means the entire world is the sanctuary of God. And you look back, like that is deep Christian Orthodox theology. We've just kind of come to practice it in a way where it's like, yeah, God's working everywhere, but come here, like
Come to church.
This is really where God is working. And that, so like what I've come to is that like I haven't devalued church. It's not like I'm like not wanting to be involved. It's just when you start to realize and start to actually really have the lenses to see God in all things. See it when you see God at the coffee shop, when you're talking across the table from somebody, when you see God in the moments when you're sitting across the desk working with somebody on mortgages like what I do, or when driving in a car, like when you start to have that awareness, it just makes church like, yeah, I'll go, but it's not my anchor point anymore, if that makes sense. And I feel bad saying it. Please know that I'm like in the middle of trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not at the end of some kind of answer on this. It's just at the moment, we are just in this glorious, like great time of life where we feel like God's presence is moving in all of the things that we're a part of. We see, like, we'll go for walks with our kids and like find opportunities to teach them about God that way. And I don't know. So I think back to like church, it's just, I know churches are probably hurting and struggling, using the same analytics that they have for decades and centuries or whatever, of like, our numbers aren't great and our like giving's not great. I don't know how to help that, honestly. Like, I think there has to be an awareness that like trusting that God really is in all things, and what the church as an organization is producing is good, but it's not the only thing that God's going to be working through. And so like, what does it mean to serve people that maybe don't come and stare at you for an hour? I don't know. Like, I think the church probably needs to ask those questions in terms of like, what's next? As I think too, again,
keep going.
I think historically, the church has always been a place for education and community, if I just want to oversimplify things. Well, hundreds of years ago, when nobody knew how to read, and books, like before the printing press, all that, like, church was the only place that people could come and actually hear new messages about God. Otherwise, it was just oral tradition from parents to kids, and that's how the stories of God were passed down. Well, I think in our day and age, like the education piece, if you can't educate yourself on things about God, like you're not, I don't know, you have your head in the sand a little bit. So like the education piece is still good, but it's like, it's not as vital as it was hundreds of years ago traditionally. And so I think, and again, like I still think it should be a part of getting together, but at the end of the day, to me, that leaves community as the other piece of the puzzle that really can't be replaced any other way. And that to me is the big piece that churches need to focus on, is making sure that it's a place of community for people. And so that's probably where Heidi and I and our family, like, it's not like we're not wanting community with people. It's just, we have people over at our house all the time. We love doing it. So like, we feel like we have a ton of community, and honestly, sometimes it's like, it's trying to fit everybody in to like who we want. We just love so many people. It's like, oh, you guys come over, you know, it's like, I don't know. We're probably just spreading ourselves out maybe too much in that regard. So like, I don't know, at some point, hopefully we'll carve some time back out to mostly just teach our kids like what regular practice looks like. But
Dude, thanks for sharing all of that. I resonate with a lot of that stuff. I feel like I'm in the season right now, and it honestly started when we had Oakland, our son, so just turned 1. But a year ago, I was working in insurance. I was doing part-time ministry stuff. I was doing part-time DJ stuff. So I was working a lot. Like, there'd be weeks I'd work 6-7 days, and then I'd be like, oh, it's Monday already. Oh, back to the work week. And when Oakland was born, there was like, I felt like the spirit just like began to shift so much within me. It was like this small tug over and over again of like, hey, simplify. We need to simplify your schedule. We need to simplify your schedule. Like, you're way too busy. And not that the other stuff wasn't enjoyable or fun, like it was adding, and maybe the better word is taking things from me. I mean, I come home from work and I'm just like exhausted and have no energy. And like Anna would get the 10% left in the tank versus the 90% first of my tank. And not that it's going to be that way always. Like, life is just crazy at times. But so I've been in the season of like trying to simplify my life, like creating space for, like, first and foremost, my family, creating space though for just like the moments with Jesus that I've often neglected in my personal relationship with him. Because it's like, when my first ministry experience was production, producing, being involved in this group, having to do that, having to do this. And then it's like, man, what if we stripped everything back and it was like, all that's left is me and my family and Jesus, and then some really valuable friendships that we have. It's like, that can be enough, I feel like, and it adds so much value to your life. But yeah, it's this process of like trying to rewire your brain to think differently about life.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is like, how do I just create pockets of space so that if I ever bump into somebody in the midst of trying to do something, it's like I have space to like be present with people. I
Mhm.
remember so many times, and maybe this is true of you, but like I'd be moving so fast and I'd bump into somebody in the grocery store and it's like, hey, how's it going? And then I just quickly move on because I'm like, oh, I got to get to a meeting, or I have to get home. I got to do this, got to do that. And it's like, um, there was a Sabbath Sunday video that our church put out, in our Dave Campbell, whom obviously you guys know. He talked about this idea of like, am I moving at a pace that's sustainable for all people? And I'm like, that was so good. There were so many moments in my life where I was moving at a pace. It was not sustainable for me. It was not sustainable for other people. And I just like, not that I like felt terrible about myself and like, oh, I'm a terrible human being for doing this, but like, I just felt bad for the moments of like, I would run into people and the moments I maybe missed out on because I'm just like thinking of the next thing and I got to do
Mhm.
something else and do something else. But it's like, what if that was the one thing that God was like, hey, just have a conversation with that person
Yeah.
for 5 minutes and see where it goes from there. And so, yeah, so really trying to like lean into those moments more. But I
Mhm.
appreciate all your vulnerability and just like your experience with kind of
Absolutely.
rewiring as well and reprocessing through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Sounds like for you, it's just the same productivity kind of mindset where it's like you're always wanting to, even, I mean, to me, honestly, like even the person in the store, it's like that's another thing. When you're in the people business, it's like even that can be like another task. It's like I need to pay attention to every single person too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, no, like God is in the peace and quiet. Actually, that to me feels the most countercultural thing to say these days. And rather than the hustle and bustle, even with other people, again, like that's a good thing. But like, are you being filled up through just realizing that you're here because God put you here, and then everything else kind of gets added on after that.
Yeah.
And so like being okay with like, I don't need to do anything. And honestly, being able to say that, like to me, it's a powerful thing. Like I want to, but like I don't need to do anything for you, God.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like you're still gonna do your thing, you know?
Yeah. It reminds me of, I don't know where I heard this, but like the Old Testament story. I think maybe it was talked about in our Sabbath Sunday video as well. But the Old Testament story with Elijah, and it's like God wasn't in the wind, God wasn't in the earthquake, God wasn't in the fire, but then like he showed up in the still small voice.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stuck with me too. Of like, I think sometimes it was easy for me to assume that like when God shows up, it's going to be these big, miraculous, powerful Holy Spirit moments, which he shows up in those ways, but just as powerful are the still small voice moments of just quietness, simplicity, space. And so like trying to lean into that and create and craft those moments to just like be with Jesus, I think is important. But it's hard to do it when the culture is like it's sending an opposite message, and there's pressure to do something completely opposite of that.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
So my last question, I know we're maybe getting a little long, but what is like one piece of advice you would give to people within like who work in ministry, who are worship leaders, who are pastors, just kind of in that umbrella? Is there one piece of advice you would personally give those types of people?
You know, I think now more than ever, it's probably good to be asking the question of just like, what is the actual true reality of where people are at these days? Because I think, you know, we're at a church that did things differently, like the last church we were at, Jaden, like, you know, in a good way, a healthy way of just like, yeah, how do we try to make things different and do it our own way so that people were enjoying it? But I think we're in a totally different thing right now. I think COVID definitely reset a lot of things. I think our country is very unhealthy. I think there's a lot of really bad versions of Christianity out there, causing people to believe and do really bad things that have nothing to do with Jesus. And I think people don't know who to listen to. And I don't know. I think church is in a tough spot, and like in terms of like just trying to like be another voice in the midst of all the other voices these days. So like how do you break through and try to reach people when like they don't care to really be around you, not you as an individual, but you know, present on a Sunday. Like there's not a value to it for them anymore. And so like, how do you, I don't know, without it getting to the place where people are just like, as a culture, people are like really desperate and down, and because they've just been missing the community again. Like for me, that it does boil down to that, like being with each other.
Yeah.
To me, that's very biblical. Like Jesus said, last thing he said was just like to show the world that you love you, that what love looks like be one as the Father and I are one. I mean, it always came back to unity.
Yep.
To me, that is the most concrete picture of what abstract love looks like, the idea of unity. I mean, that to me, the doctrine of the Trinity is the exact example of what unity is supposed to look like. Somehow three entities are one. That doesn't even make sense, but yet here we are, like trying to show what community looks like with each other. And to me, that feels like going to be always the biggest need. And so like, how do you create that for people? And I don't know, my fear is that there's gonna be a lot of hurt before there's a lot of growth. That's, I guess in a way that's probably just how things work. I mean, that's how it worked in my life. I had to go through a lot of pain of stepping away from, not stepping away, but just feeling alienated from friend groups or whatever. Not because anything people did necessarily, but it just, you feel disconnected, and that causes a lot of pain. It did for me. And then it was that caused me to really be keenly aware of who God is and where God is, and that, I wouldn't change that for anything. But it took pain to get there. And so hopefully churches hang in there. Honestly, like maybe that's the message. Hang in there. If your church isn't what you want it to look like now, I don't know. God's always faithful, that's for sure. So
yes. Well, this was really awesome conversation. I'm glad we got to have it. I mean, we didn't really get into COVID a whole lot, but I feel like the Spirit took it in a different direction. And so we wanted to just kind of lean in and dive in a little more. So thanks for hanging out with us, though, for this episode, last episode. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate that very
thanks
much.
for inviting me.
Totally. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to close with some prayer real quick, and then we'll get out of here. So
Awesome.
Okay, God, thank you for today. Thank you for Chris and his life, and just man, the deep formational work that you've been doing, the big questions that he's been asking. It's just been really cool to hear his heart and his vulnerability, and just the growth that has already been produced within him in this last season. I pray for just a special blessing over him and his family, over Heidi and all the kids, God. And I just pray that even just career-wise, what he's doing, God, that you would bless that abundantly, and that your favor would just be upon everything his hands touch in the mortgage lending and banking world and all of that, God. And so I'm grateful for this time together, and we ask that you be with us the rest of this week. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
If you want to get a hold of Chris, here's his information. We appreciate him coming and being with us. We just love his heart so much. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
See you.